Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Today, we will be talking about the topic of winning in the living room, is what we're calling it, and how you can scale successfully on STV leveraging AMC. So, my name is Matt Koski. I've been our director of paid media and Vision Horizons the past 2 years. I'm joined here by Joon. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, really quick, Joon, Choi, Chief Revenue Officer of Xnurta. So excited to be here.
Great. So, why the living room and why should you be considering connected TV? Well, we know that Amazon is growing more and more saturated than ever on the platform. More brands are joining, there's more competition from Chinese competitors, and CPCs are rising. So, the costs to compete at the bottom of the funnel on platform are increasing. But not only that, think about your own lives. How often are you watching shows? I know we were talking about shows just a minute ago versus actually shopping on the platform. And if you are anywhere close to the average consumer is watching roughly 3 hours of streaming content per day versus the average shopping checkout, which might only be once a week, even for an active user on Amazon, is an average of 11 minutes. So if you are cutting out the upper funnel or not visible whatsoever on STV, you're missing a massive prime window to engage shoppers. And you're really getting into a competitive knife fight at the last second of the purchase cycle. And so the reason now is really to get earlier in that awareness and consideration phase so that you can stand out outside of just the little square box on the search results, to make sure that you have that visibility, you have that brand recognition, because you can only show so much in the main thumbnail. And if that's not engaging or there's no brand recognition, you can just miss out on tons of traffic. So that's kind of the why of connected TV. Why now? Maybe you've also been keeping up with Amazon's news, but they also now have connection to 90% of CTV households. So 90% of American households that have streaming devices, with their partnership with Roku, you now have access to. So that's a little bit of the background of why CTV. But then how do we apply streaming TV in a meaningful way for our customers? We know there's so many different customers out there. CPMs to run streaming TV can be, upwards of $20 to $40, depending on the content. So you want to make sure you're making the most of that investment. And so Amazon's value prop is, hey, we have amazing first-party data. We have tons of shopping insights, billions of different touch points in their search and purchase journey. And so we can refine the audiences to your specific customer segment, to shoppers who are in the market for what you're looking for. And so as you can see up here, just an example for, let's say, a beauty specific client, you can target shoppers who are in the market for premium beauty products. They're in the aisle for lipsticks or concealers, product specific, or even lifestyle, that they are high spenders or are new to the beauty category. And so you can make all those audience refinements to make sure that you're lasering in on the right shopper with that major investment in upper funnel. And from here, it's great that you have this first party data and you have access to this refinement, but how do we actually know what audiences to target, what demographics to target? And that's really where the Xnurta platform can help inform that. So I think many of you may already be familiar with what Amazon Marketing Cloud is, but for those of you who are not, we'll just do a brief once over. It's Amazon's data warehouse and clean room that gives you access to tons of shopping insights and data points that you don't have access to natively in the default reporting. And there's two key points that you can pull out of that. You can build custom audiences that are more laser focused than just your generic targeting. And you can pull in unique insights that aren't available natively in the platform or in the reports. And so what Xnurta does is they give you the tools to help unlock those insights and make the use of all the wealth of data that Amazon's providing. So Joon, I'd love to pass over to you of just within the AMC hub, how shoppers and brands can look at the data and the audiences that are available to them and make sense of that using Xnurta.
Yeah. And I think a great intro. I think AMC is probably the biggest thing to come to retail media, in my opinion, since sponsored ads. And everybody knows how impactful sponsored ads has been for the industry. Basically, a lot of people consider it to be effectively the start of retail media. And so with AMC and how we're looking at AMC, one of the models that we have is something called the audience label tool, where it effectively tells you not just what you are targeting, because a lot of people have that data. It can also tell you what you're not targeting, right? What you're not targeting from a ROAS, top 3 segments to drive X ROAS, top 3 segments to drive new to brand. It'll tell you all of that because, to your point, you had a great description of AMC, and like how I describe it is AMC is basically a database of every single one of your customer impressions. Like it's the most valuable data you could possibly have. And so you could do all of this complex modeling, custom targeting on top of that to drive way more efficiency across every single dollar that you spend. And a great example that we had was we had a brand, a homeopathic brand, that had no idea that Whole Foods was a shopping segment. Zero idea. And so we ran the audience segment and audience label tool, and we identified Whole Foods is an obvious segment you should be in. Why aren't you targeting this? And now it's the highest performing segment in every single one of their campaigns. So this is where AMC is like, whoa, like, it's pretty eye-opening in terms of the information, the data that you can gather. And I think this is just one of the examples.
Yeah, and to build on that, Amazon has these audience overlaps. So you might think of yourself as, hey, we are in, the grilling space, and we know we're going to win on in-market grillers, but there could be a massive audience overlap for, sports enthusiasts and football watchers. And so what...
You just described me.
Perfect
there
overlap.
There you go. Okay, perfect.
So,
that's good to know.
So it might be self-evident that if you're in the grilling space, hey, I should be targeting people who are looking for grilling supplies, but it might not be so obvious to consider, football viewers or other segment of shoppers. And so this custom audiences tool or custom labels can give you that insight of what are those, complementary audiences that I'm not thinking of, or demographics that would be great refinements to make to your upper funnel investment that might not be self-evident and you might not currently be targeting. And it helps kind of give you a roadmap of, hey, where you might be currently, what's working, but also where the golden nuggets and the treasure that you're not currently mining that is just sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a great, these are screenshots from the platform. So you can see here for one of our clients, the top new to brand ROAS driving demographic segments were ages 25 through 34, 35 through 44, as well as men. So, again, you might have all that D2C audience data, but it's good to get the validation from all your Amazon shopping as well. So one additional layer that you can make in your audience refinement for CTV campaigns is in custom audiences. So Joon, I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing brands leverage in custom audiences and how that's producing better results.
Yeah, I think there are custom audiences, I think, is probably the reason why, and a lot of people don't know this, but AMC has been around for a couple years. It's not like it just started this year, but the introduction of custom audiences, I think it was probably about 1.5 years ago, is what really set off this interest in AMC. And so from our AMC tool and some of the best kind of custom audiences that we've seen is target people that typically, if we're selling grills, target people that typically spend a lot more money, target people that typically buy the more expensive grills, target people that have a higher AOV after every single purchase. That's a custom audience segment that you can build that you can't without AMC. You can now retarget people that are new to brand only. So in our audience hub, and this is one of my favorite features, is in our audience hub, you can literally now only look at targeting new to brand shoppers, or not just new to brand shoppers, but new to brand lookalike shoppers. So find me anybody that's new to brand, that looks like a new to brand, that has all of these different specific actions, has made all these actions that make them look like to a new to brand audience, and you can retarget them. And so the concept of incrementality, where I don't think anybody solved it at this point, but I think there are ways now with AMC where you can back into incrementality like you could never before. You can actually retarget based upon probably the most directionally accurate metric, which is new to brand, and especially with this 5-year look back window. So those are two. And then the other one is, especially for CPG, is subscribe and save. So you can now retarget based upon subscribe and save audiences, specific lookalikes, specific actions, what ASINs are they buying? And all of this was impossible without AMC. And so we've seen brands that don't increase their year-over-year ad spend, but increase the efficiency of their ads and of the total sales by 20 to 30% just with AMC and custom audiences.
Amazing. And one thing, I know Prime Day is on everybody's minds. It's coming up quicker than ever in June. And one custom audience we've deployed for our brands is the ability to take your past Prime Day purchasers, so maybe they're price sensitive, maybe they're deal seekers, and you can look at shoppers who maybe haven't re-engaged with the brand since that last deal event. And as you maybe look to something like CTV or streaming TV to reactivate a past customer, you can look at those past Prime Day purchasers, re-engage them, and that's been a fruitful endeavor for us to get greater efficiency, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And then on top of that, Prime Day is obviously highly open. So things you can do with the AMC that you just couldn't do before is a lot of the times you have so much traffic on Prime Day, but not a lot of shoppers, sometimes they don't convert, right? They're just adding things to the basket. They're in the discovery mode, where we've seen a lot of brands, agencies retarget that audience and then actually offer them with discounts even after Prime Day, and those are really high converting audiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's ability to then set cart abandoner promotion, so people who are on the fence, and then to power that with a custom AMC audience and drive ad traffic as well to just maximize the promo with media dollars to drive those conversions as best as possible.
Yeah.
So maybe you're convinced of the efficacy of streaming TV. There's so much you can do from an audience refinement perspective to make these dollars work harder for you. Now the problem is measurement. How do we actually assess the impact of the investment that we're making in upper funnel? And I quote this as ROAS jail. If you have only focused on conversion, bottom funnel, ad investment, you might have that fixed mindset of ROAS, and I need to get a $3 return, otherwise we got to shut the ads off. And that is just a barrier you have to overcome when investing in awareness media. What we have started leveraging with our clients, starting to make the jump from being bottom funnel focused to full funnel and investing in awareness, is utilizing AMC insights to get the full picture and to better attribute the impact that awareness media is having. Nobody's gonna stop their favorite show to go check out your product. If I'm watching Fallout on Prime Video, nothing is gonna get me off that window. So when you see a STV campaign with a 0.1 ROAS, that is not a faulty campaign, that's just human behavior. And so we have to embrace that, but we need to look at other tools like Amazon Marketing Cloud, using Xnurta to help uncover the full picture. So this is one of the many audience tools that you have access to within Xnurta. We've used this as the path to conversion query. And so one way that we've started to measure the impact of STV is there's the customization to filter down just the campaigns or purchase paths that include STV or even begin with STV, so we can really isolate the purchases that are being driven through the exception being STV. Joon, did you have any other things to add about the path to purchase model or ways that can be impactful?
Well, I think just in the macro perspective with what Amazon is doing is they're definitely not just a commerce platform anymore. They're a distribution channel. You can see all of the partnerships that they literally made. You mentioned 10% Connected TV, where we see Amazon is now partnering with all of these major sports leagues, right? And so now they're getting into sports, and it's a really big push for them. And so you kind of get a sense of right now with Amazon Video and what we're running, this is truly the only place where you can run a video and track it all the way to conversion. You can't do that with TV. And it's the most accurate way to do so. And with AMC layered on top of this video, it gives you access to insights around video that you probably never had. And so I think those are the key things as you think about where path to conversion, to your point, ROAS, Joe, we've seen people where before AMC, they're like, I will never ever run video again. Never ever. Don't even talk to me about video.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, actually, look at this. And you see, look how much it's impacted your ROAS. Look at how much it impacts your sponsored product conversion. Look at how much it impacts your LinkedIn searches. And you see this holistic picture that you never could before. And that people are now increasing their ad spend in video and decreasing their ad spend in sponsored products. So it's like, that is a trend that we're seeing across the board. Sponsored products are obviously always dominating to a certain extent. But it's very interesting where people now are leaning into video with all the distribution channels, with everything Amazon's doing.
Yeah, and I think that blends right into the next model that can be really powerful, which is multi-touch attribution. And so this is, if you're familiar with Amazon's default reporting, it's going to be last touch attribution. So the last ad that a shopper was exposed to is what gets all the credit. But with Amazon Marketing Cloud and through the Xnurta platform, they have 7 different models that you can select from, and you can see, if I put more emphasis on that first touch, what's the ad mix that is driving the most sales? If I do a multi-touch and giving equal credit to every touch point in the shopping journey, how does my media mix look now? And so what we've been able to do, to your point, Joon, is look at video investment that attributed ROAS for maybe a sponsored brand video campaign on platform is well below that of a sponsored product campaign. But when we layer on multi-touch attribution or first touch attribution, we see that a lot of those purchases started with sponsored brand video, but it's not getting any of the credit for that purchase. And so we've actually adjusted our media mix for our brands in light of the insights and learnings from multi-touch attribution.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I think the overall MTA is a function of path to conversion, but then we've seen brands where they're literally like, okay, let's run this MTA model. And it's not just on the ad product level, you can actually run it on a campaign level too. So out of these 10 campaigns, how should I distribute $1 million? And it'll literally tell you down to the exact percentage. If you're optimizing for, let's say, new to brand sales, it'll tell you down to the exact percentage how you should invest in each of those 10 campaigns. And we've seen brands that are investing tens of millions of dollars on Amazon run this MTA model analysis and identify, actually, we are massively overinvested in these specific campaigns here and underinvested in these campaigns. And one of the case studies that we saw was they did this, completely restructured their campaign and campaigns, and it drove a 15.9% increase in conversion rate across millions of ad spend, which is a lot of efficiency. So I think those are the things where you start thinking about MTA models, path to conversion. Like these use cases are not just one-off siloed use cases. It's everywhere. It's really how creative.
And I think one final piece to the puzzle that can help prove out the investment, because we know that upper funnel awareness is very costly, is not just what are the conversions you're driving initially, but how does that turn into customer loyalty and increase lifetime value over an extended period. So this model of the customer lifetime value on Xnurta has been really insightful for our brands to not only track the initial conversion and the efficiency of what's the CAC and what's the cost I'm acquiring, but what is the long-term ROAS over a year-long period, so that we can help justify to our brand's senior leadership of, hey, it's a costly investment that we're making at this point in time, but it's paying dividends in brand growth over a year-long period.
Yeah, I think the lifetime value ROAS metric, I think, is going to pick up steam. It's already picked up steam, but I think more and more folks, especially with the 5-year look back window now, are going to start looking at that metric. And there's a lot of nuances there. It's not like 1-to-1, of course, but it's very directional in terms of, hey, maybe some of these campaigns that we weren't investing in because we weren't capturing repeat purchasers, we weren't capturing the subscribers that it generated. Now it opens up and completely some of these campaigns and some of these brands, especially CPG, are restructuring what campaigns they're massively investing in, what campaigns they're not. And so it's actually also a metric. I don't remember off the top of my head what Amazon's calling it. They're not calling it lifetime value ROAS, but this is a metric that they're also planning on releasing, just as they think about not lifetime value ROAS, but specifically in general, not just attributing ROAS, but taking a look at the broader picture. And so Amazon's as well is calling this out because it's such an important metric.
And getting back to Prime Day, one thing that we have looked at using this model with some of our brands who are investing heavily on Prime Day is what's that new to brand cohort that we're acquiring during Prime Day. Maybe we're doing a steeper discount than typical. Maybe we're investing more in an awareness campaign leading into Prime Day. How is that producing a greater new to brand number, and what's the lifetime value of that Prime Day cohort that we're acquiring? And that can be a great talking point to leadership of why we need to invest in these big tentpole events.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of great ideas of how you can apply this, but what's the impact this can actually have? So we worked with the brand in just accomplishing everything that we described. So they had major growth goals on Amazon. They're a big established brand. A lot of challenges of kind of plateauing, and while we were seeing some steady growth through sponsored investment alone in lower middle funnel DSP, the awareness piece of the puzzle was missing. And so they knew that they needed to invest in full funnel in order to generate that brand awareness that was needed to drive growth. But they also had rigorous demands from their leadership that they had to fulfill of justifying that investment. And so the attributed ROAS and the attributed performance on platform was subpar. But when we layered in the path to purchase insights, we saw an 8x return on investment attributed to STV alone. We also were able to prove out that new to brand purchase rate improved by 60% versus their non-STV advertising. So huge new to brand driver. And then the result of that from a macro perspective was we saw 20% year over year brand growth. And then for the featured product in that campaign, 34% year over year growth. So massive results that the brand was happy to make the investment once they saw the whole picture and the whole impact. But there were question marks of what was it doing? We invested all this money, but what's the impact? And there wasn't a very clear way before AMC in the path to purchase model of proving out the impact that this investment had. Well, to wrap things up, I think how can you apply this to your brands? Well, there's a few simple steps. So one is invest in that awareness layer if you're not already. Streaming TV can be a big investment. We recommend to brands a 3-month campaign with a minimum $15,000 investment. So that might be a bit more to bite off than you're able to get initial approval for. But even stepping into online video, that's a clickable format. It's a little lower CPM. You can get started with a lower budget. That might be a way to dip your toes into awareness. From there, you can use Xnurta to make those audience refinements. You can leverage the data from Amazon Marketing Cloud to help inform what audiences to target. And then lastly is just mapping the full customer journey, as we mentioned, using the insights from path to purchase and MTA models to help prove out the investment. And if you're not currently doing sponsor or streaming TV investment, but you're running sponsor brand video, that's another way that you can still glean insights and help refine your media mix without having to have that full funnel investment. Anything else that you would add here?
No, that was good. I'll just say with AMC, probably the last thing is, like, it is really, the more creative you are the people that are going to move forward. Because like with AMC, there's some really cool use cases that I can take credit for. But one of the use cases was there was a baby brand, and so they obviously were selling baby apparel. And when they knew that they were buying this specific, I think it was like this specific shirt size, a year later, they're going to outgrow that shirt size and maybe go from small to medium. And so they were basically tracking, okay, we know exactly they're buying this season. So they'll probably come back in a year later and outgrow that and buy this specific shirt size. And so they were retargeting based upon that knowledge, and it was one of their most impactful AMC custom audiences because they had such a treasure trove of data. So it's things like that when you think about creativity, you think about AMC, like that's going to be the biggest unlock across every category. Right? That's not just baby. That's across every single category, CPG, beauty that you can think of, where all of those cases and all of those use cases exist.
100%. Well, Joon, thank you so much for joining us. We have both of our information here, but feel free to talk to me if you have questions about structuring an STV campaign. Talk to Joon about how you can leverage AMC in your business. But thank you so much for joining us.